Last 30 years, the diplomatic relationship between the two sovereign nations have gone through this process. And it's very unique in many ways. And we believe we have learned a lesson from the last 30 years of diplomatic relationships. Now we are entering a new phase, a new global order.
The very wise words of President Museveni: African countries are shaping their own destinies as nation states and as a continent. Our substantial resources must be harnessed first and foremost for Africa's benefit, to grow Africa's economies and to pursue sustainable development.
Draw for Africa, your premier channel for insightful discussions and analysis on Africa's economic and geopolitical landscape. We delve into the continent's dynamic partnerships, focusing on the synergy between Africa and major global players like BRICS and Russia. Our content highlights the strategic initiatives driving Africa's development from infrastructure to trade and emphasizes the continent's quest for sustainable growth and autonomy. Join us as we explore Africa's journey towards harnessing its vast resources for mutual benefit and global cooperation. Let's begin.
Bilateral relationships between Eritrea and the Russian Federation within this context. The last 30 years, the diplomatic relationship between the two sovereign nations have gone through this process. And it's very unique in many ways. And we believe we have learned a lesson from the last 30 years of diplomatic relationships. Now we are entering a new phase, a new global order. And we are determined to work together to see what the future looks like and cooperate in all fields so that our bilateral relationships within a multilateral context will move forward to promote a new order, a new world order.
This is your first official visit to Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Eritrea in January. What does this intensification of contacts mean for the relations between our countries?
It's not only bilateral. As I mentioned earlier, the visit of Foreign Minister Lavrov was in Asmara. We had a very fruitful discussion on cultivating partnership for the long term. And we had to go through evaluating the experience of the last years, 30 years. How do we move forward? Promote bilateral cooperation programs, but also face the challenge that we jointly face. And a continuation to the meeting in Asmara, there was a meeting where our foreign minister visited Russia, and there was the Sochi meeting. Then we further discussed a number of issues on how to promote bilateral cooperation programs. But that should be based within a common understanding, a shared understanding on how the world is moving. And that was very fruitful. Those two discussions were the basis for designing jointly a program for the future. How do we manage our bilateral cooperation programs? How can we go beyond that and promote a more broader multilateral relationship? The continent of Africa is there, is a marginalized continent. We have our sub-region, the Horn of Africa, other sub-regions at the continental level. Now with the situation globally and the Russian Federation facing challenge from hegemonistic forces, how do we design a common program forward? And those two meetings were very fruitful, as I said. And this visit came as a result of those consultations that were undertaken in Asmara and Sochi.
Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Eritrean counterpart, His Excellency Osman Saleh Mohammed, have previously identified energy, transport infrastructure development, information and communication technology and agriculture as promising areas for cooperation. What plans do you have for implementing joint projects in these sectors?
The bilateral cooperation programs are very broad. We have infrastructural programs, ports, airports, roads, railways, ropeways, energy programs, inclusive of renewable energy, geothermal energy, agriculture, water management, social programs, education, health, mining, transportation, communications, and diplomatic and media cooperations even. It's an integrated cooperation program. Each sector, every industry is involved. We've been developing projects and programs for every sector and every industry with the potential of the Russian Federation. And given the challenge, the present challenge, there is an understanding that the Russian Federation could make huge contributions in all these areas of cooperation. We start with our bilateral programs. Bilateral cooperation programs are not general issues. We need to concretize what bilateral cooperation program is. And bilateral cooperation includes or is inclusive of all these details I mentioned. How do we develop projects on infrastructure, for example, roads, railways, ropeways, water, energy? It's a very huge challenge, and we've been working together to identify the areas, but go beyond that and jointly consider the mobilization of resources. How do we implement these bilaterally agreed programs on all these areas? Do we have the resources for that? Do we have the time? We need to have a clearly defined time schedule for implementing each and every program. I mean, our bilateral discussions on all these issues has been very useful in identifying the needs or assessing the needs, but also mobilizing the resources, establishing or putting in place mechanisms of implementation and follow-up. And even mobilization of resource will take stock of an integrated approach. An integrated approach, you can't separate one program from the other program. They are interrelated. How do you manage to implement these separate or concrete projects so that ultimately they come up with synergy? Synergy is very critical.
Nearly 3 years ago in the city of Sochi, we pledged as African leaders and as the Russian Federation to cooperate in a manner that is mutually beneficial and that serves the interests of our respective peoples. In the intervening years, we have experienced strong geopolitical and economic crosswinds. We continue to count the human cost of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on our economies. As South Africa, and indeed as Africa, we are greatly encouraged by the Russian Federation's commitment to deepening collaboration with the nations of Africa. This is important as we chart a new course for economic development, growth, and prosperity, and as we seek to achieve the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. As South Africa, we remember with deep gratitude how the support of the people and the government of the then Soviet Union supported our struggle for liberation, as well as the struggles of many other countries and nations on our African continent. Today, our bilateral relationship remains strong. We continue to collaborate in political, economic, social, defense, and security spheres. We work closely across multilateral platforms such as the United Nations, the G20, and as members of BRICS. Our participation in forums such as this one is guided by our quest to realize the African Union's Agenda 2063 vision of economic integration and inclusive socio-economic development. As you know, and as a member of BRICS yourselves, as the Russian Federation, South Africa will shortly be hosting the 15th BRICS Summit in Johannesburg. We see this summit as an opportunity to promote enhanced global cooperation and to achieve common prosperity for the nations of Africa. The BRICS partners are significant investors in Africa. The upcoming summit will therefore give particular attention to infrastructure development supported by the new development bank, the BRICS Bank that is, as well as also supported by the African Continental Free Trade Area from a trading point of view. The African Continental Free Trade Area, once fully operational, will unlock the benefits of the continental market and generate mutually beneficial opportunities for both African and BRICS countries alike. As clearly articulated by other leaders who have spoken before me, but more especially the very wise words of President Museveni, African countries are shaping their own destinies as nation states and as a continent,